Facebook, family, and friends, what's happening? I apologize for the tardiness. We are having some minor technical difficulties, so I would love it if while we're broadcasting, if you guys start having problems seeing the feed or anything, you let me know. Uh, we're trying to make sure this is as smooth as possible. Um, if I got anybody out there, friends, family, who can help me, uh, let me know. I really got to figure out the StreamYard thing. We're having problems with the comment section, especially. Don't know what's going on. Not sure why it's working funky, but it is working funky. And so, if you guys are out there and you're familiar with streaming platforms and all the crap that goes with streaming platforms, hit me up. Let me know. Um, I could definitely use a little bit of assistance. Other than that, you know what it is. It's Sunday morning. Forum is Anonymous. Let me introduce our founder, my co-host, and uh, I guess he's, you know, a friend or family, whatever you want to call him. Let me introduce you to the large-headed individual who I call my brother, Samuel. ¿Cómo está usted? Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. What's up, brother?
Not much, man. How
You
you
know,
feeling
we're
this morning?
friends. We're best friends.
Best friend
I'm your
to the
boyfriend.
end.
Your boyfriend.
Boyfriend. He's my friend, and he's a boy. He's my boyfriend. Hey, you see that the proper way to cuddle video I sent you?
No. What?
Check it out on the
No.
talk.
No, I'm not looking. No. No, I don't want to
You
cuddle.
ain't got no choice. You got to, man. We got to learn how to cuddle correctly. It's the appropriate way to cuddle if you really love someone. I got video of you cuddling me in my sleep. I think that was assault, man. I swear to
The
God.
outside. I mean, I'll cuddle as long as I'm the outside of the spoon.
How you doing down there in Hillbillyville?
Man, I'm pretty sure you guys have had some heat too, but man, let me tell you, the heat. I love it though. I
Yeah,
love it because I don't have to move snow.
yeah.
I compare everything now to moving snow. I'm not moving any more snow. I'm doing great. We spent. Hey, dude, I got in my pool yesterday, and it was like getting in like a hot spring. The
It was
pool
that
was
hot
so
out.
it was freaking warm. The pool water was. It wasn't even. I couldn't even cool down. I was like sweating in the pool.
Yesterday was nice, man. It was 70 degrees, but last week we had some 100-degree weather, man. I was pissed. So Atlanta goes to private school. She goes to St. Joe's, paid for by her grandpa uh, on her dad's side, and it was 113-degree heat index, and the school is so old it does not have central air conditioning.
What?
They only let Atlanta take 3 water breaks throughout the day, and said they opened the windows to let the breeze go through. What it was like a convection oven, 114 degree convection.
Circulating hot
Right,
air.
right. We're slow roasting our children here for $8,000 a year.
Well, they here they said they have to use some sort of there's a guidance on the heat that comes from like a weather monitoring thing that the school, and so they told the kids like 2 days that it was too hot, so they canceled
Morning,
um,
Amy.
any outdoor training. But then the next day, and it's still like 103 degrees outside, just raw temperature. They said, "Well, we're still going to do baseball practice, but we're going to give them a few extra water breaks." I'm like, savage. That's
Yeah,
savage. I was
yeah.
like, man,
On the same token, I had some friends from Cali talk to me about the fact that we have school until it's a -30 wind chills, and they kill school there anything under 60 degrees, right? Like that's a freeze warning for Cali. Out here, it's like, yeah, it's only -15. Put a coat on, wear a scarf. You're good.
your
Put some mittens
eyelashes
on.
aren't sticking to your face
Right,
yet. So,
right. Man, I'm telling you, bro. It was right after we. It was a few years after we had moved here. I was talking to a homeboy back in East LA, and he was talking about gangster passes and tough motherfuckers. And I had seen this little girl. at the bus stop. It was -8 degrees, and she's wearing a halter top and a skirt, and you know, some tiny ass shoes. And I'm like, bro, when you're that gangster, holler at me, right? Can no one in LA tell me they're harder than any of the kids out here? Like, what's up, Mike? I love you, bro. Love you, Amy. Like, you can't convince me that any fucking OG in LA is tougher than that little 14-year-old girl who was standing at a bus stop in -8 degree weather in a skirt and a halter top, like just chilling, right? Like, it's just a little cold out, man. So I'm trying to find. You got the pillars on your thing. I'm trying to find them now. I had to get into the email.
I'm looking. I think I sent you the new literature too.
I believe you, Amy. Girls, man, they really go out when it comes to what they're gonna look like, regardless of the weather. Oh no, this is a cute outfit. It's okay if it's -832 degrees and I got freaking icicles coming out of places that they don't belong. Like, it's all right. It's all right. We'll be okay.
Good morning, Amy, Mike. Once again, Amy did put my name first for the record. Thank you very much for that, Amy. I mean, it goes by seniority, to be honest. Big I, little U. But you could go first if we went by cranial circumference.
Why do you think my head is bigger than that massive fucking Triceratops dome?
Dude, you got 2 fucking house speakers tied to your fucking face right now. What are you talking about?
I needed to make sure I could hear.
You got the old school cables running to them.
Right. Man, bro. Oh, man, it's been a good couple weeks, you guys. Last time we talked, and just so you guys know, I apologize. We haven't been on here in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I had to take an extended trip. I flew out to Cali to pick up Danica. We drove a 32-foot Winnebago Adventurer home, and I drove it through the mountains, 2,200 miles of absolute torture. This thing was not okay to drive, man. Like, it was in perfectly good working condition. The problem is when you hit the mountains of Wyoming and you get 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts and a loaf of oversized bread, like, you're instantly from one lane to the next lane, back to the other lane. Morning, Mike. It was a rough ride back. And then, dude, we broke down in Nebraska. We lost a tire, right? We called AAA because we had a spare, and they came out. They slapped on the new tire for us, which was amazing. And we got back on the road. We made it 212 miles away and blew the second tire, right, in a place called Kearney, Nebraska, right? So we're on the freeway, broken down, 2-lane highway. I mean, trucks are passing us by doing 80, knocking the whole thing would rock. 8 o'clock at night, nothing's open. AAA says they're going to send us out a tow truck, right? About midnight, we're still sitting there waiting. The state troopers pull up behind me. Now, I don't know if you guys know this. To move an RV, it either needs to be registered or you have to have what's called a one-time moving permit. It costs $25. It allows you to drive it from point A to point B for however long it takes, right, to get there one time. So I got my moving permit. It's on the front of the fucking thing, but the plates on the back of the thing are expired. State trooper pull up. I get out, going back to talk to them, let them know that, AAA is coming. Believe it or not, the 2 state troopers that stopped me in Nebraska were the only Spanish-speaking troopers in the entire state of Nebraska. Like, we kicked it on the side of the road at midnight, like, for 20 minutes. He came up, he said, "Excuse me, sir, my name's Officer Peña, or Trooper Peña." I was like, "Peña, ¿habla español?" He was like, "Sí, sí hablas." Hey, only brown troopers in the entire state, and I get them both, man. We kicked it for like a half hour, and then we got stuck in Kearney, Nebraska for almost 2 fucking days waiting on a tire, right? It was the craziest trip I've ever been on. Like, sitting in 115-degree heat in a camper waiting for a tire, like in the middle of a tow lot in the middle of nowhere, like just in the middle of nowhere, man. But shout out to Carney Towing and Trucks. They helped us out amazingly. They're amazing people. If you're ever in Nebraska, and I have no idea why anyone would go there, but if you're ever in Kearney, Nebraska, and you have a car problem, call Carney Towing and Truck and let them know Monty sent you. So they were pretty fucking amazing, man. They were great people, bro. They let me borrow a car to go into town to get supplies and hooked us up, man. So thank you guys. But yeah, so it's been a wild week. We missed a couple of episodes. The last time we were talking, we had discussed moving into the pillars section of our literature, which is what we're going to do now. Sammy, unless you have something more pressing, why don't we push forward? Are you going to share it on your screen, or I'm trying to find it?
I have it. I can. I'm just trying to move things around so it makes sense, like how we did talk quite a bit about steps 1, 2, and 3. You know, 1 is like talking about surrender. 2 is kind of like, I could use a little bit of help, I'm considering it. And 3 is like, okay, I'm going to take the help and I'm going to do something about it right now. The problem when we get to step 3 that a lot of folks have is because we talk a lot about establishing relationships, right? Or reestablishing. So you're either going to create new ones or you're going to reestablish the positive, healthy, supportive ones, right?
Yep.
And so that takes a bit of effort to do. And I think there's a lot of, by the time you get to steps 1, 2, and 3, you've been through a lot, right? Like, and not only have you been through a lot, you've put people through a lot. You've put a lot of people through a lot of things. And for, you know, some of us, it's been years, if not decades, that we've done that. And so, man, our relationships are kind of in shambles, right? Like I think the common term is we've burnt a lot of bridges.
Yeah.
Some of those bridges are still on fire. Some of those bridges are still with embers. And, you know, some have been long toasted, right? And you know, I want to go back before we get into the actual pillars. I want to go back into a conversation I've shared before, and I want to share it again though. When I got to Waupun in '92, I ended up in the hole the same day I got there, right? I messed up pretty bad. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I messed up as soon as I was messing up before I even got there. One, I didn't understand that different states had different prison cultures. You know, I thought inmates ran the prisons in Wisconsin like they ran them in Illinois.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was sending letters ahead of time, you know, get things ready, I'm coming. You know, and my friends who were more than willing to help me, they really didn't have the wherewithal or the stomach to tell me it's not like that here. So I walked into, you know, this prison expecting a certain greeting, and the reception I got was like the next 2 years in the hole because I was just a walk-in violation, right? And I didn't know it. Anyway, while I was in the hole, I ended up next to this young guy. He was a really cool guy. His name was Tuffy, and Tuffy had committed a murder at the age of 15, and he was doing essentially like an impossible sentence, right? And me and him were in the hole talking, and I don't know why I asked. I was just, you know, I wasn't very, while I was a gang leader, I wouldn't say I was very smart the way I am, you know, experienced today. You know, I had that experience, but none of this. So, but I was still inquisitive, and I asked him, like, you know, when you killed the dude that you killed, because he had told me the story about this beef they had, and you know, that dude was after him, and he was after that dude for a long time, and then he's the one who got the drop on him, and He kills the dude, and I asked him, like, what were you guys mad about? And I mean, think about this, right? I'm asking you what you're mad about, because the anger that you felt was pretty significant to be at a point where you want to kill somebody, right? So he said two things that were quite shocking. To the first question, he was like, I can't remember. The kid couldn't remember what was going on. And then I said, well, are you still mad? Like, even though you can't remember, are you still mad about it? And he said, I wasn't mad 15 seconds after I did it. He was like, I wasn't even. So when you think about what that story kind of represents, right? It's how much emotion is behind our addictive logic, our addictive behavior, our addictive lifestyle. It's a lot of emotions that we think are very permanent, but are actually very temporary emotions, temporary thoughts.
So I got a question, and I don't want to fall too far off subject and get into politics, but do you think that's indicative of how screwed up our justice system is? Is that we hold a 15-year-old boy who doesn't have the capabilities to really think about his emotions the way we do in our 30s and 40s, even our 20s, right? Our impulse control is next to nothing. Do you think that's an indictment on our justice system that we could do that to a little kid? Like, because a 15-year-old boy, like, to me, I'm thinking of a baby, right? Like, I remember being 15. I remember being out in the streets. I remember doing the things you and me and Tuffy did. But I couldn't imagine doing that now, right? Like making those snap decisions now with the emotions that I had then, because I've matured, right? Like the maturation had to happen at some point, we hope, and it has. Do you think that is an indictment against our justice system, that we can hold the child responsible?
If I can, and I'm not trying to dismiss that question, but
yeah,
that's outside the scope of what
of recovery, right?
Right.
Because, I was just asking your personal opinion.
Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion.
I know.
No one's innocent in this, in what, regardless of, yes, Amy, I do actually, and no one's innocent on either side of this issue.
Yeah.
Right. That's just being fair. However, even then, even now, I have the same thought about consequences, and think about how we used to think about this. Who cares what your reason for doing something was? If you did it, you still have to pay the consequence for it. I used to think that way then, and I still accept that now.
I dig that.
Right? Go ahead.
I said I dig that. I absolutely understand. Right?
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that when we're young, we are doing these things. But think about, not talking about Tuffy's situation, but just, when we think about, FA spends a lot of time thinking about victims. So from the victim's perspective, they're just looking for justice, right? They don't care about your mommy daddy issues. They might have compassion for you. They might have empathy for you, but none of that will exonerate you from the consequences of your actions, right? They might ask the judge to go light on you. There are some people who are asking for your head, and there are some people who are asking for mercy for you, even though they're the family members of the people you hurt.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, and I tell, like, I just very, very light years away from what we're talking about. The other day, I was teaching Samaya how to vacuum the pool, and I walked her through all the steps that I thought were necessary to understand how to vacuum the pool. I showed her, demonstrated, had her show me and demonstrate, and then I left because I put a lot of time and effort in keeping her pool clean, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I was gone 2 minutes, right? Tell me why, when I go back to check on her, because I was cooking arrachera on the grill, so I was just running back and forth. When I went back, I had all the hose in the pool, right? And I showed her how I put it in there, and water. Tell me why she took all the hose out of the pool to get it out of her way. The one thing I didn't say, she figured out, and so she said, Dad, I didn't mean to. And I'm like, it don't matter, you did it.
Right.
Right. And then I said, look, I'm not mad. I know it's your first time. Sorry, like I'm over it. But that's the same mentality I have. Like the society doesn't care why you did it. They care that you did it. So there, right. But there are two issues. I'm trying to see what Mike said. Out here, focus on youth nowadays in the justice system. Mike, there's not enough, right? There's not enough community leaders, but I'm one. Month is one. There, Amy's even one, right? Like there are leaders out there, but we could use more, right? We could use more. And even from out here, I'm talking with Corey out there who just got nominated to. Did you see that? Or was it Corey? Or he's my old alderman who got nominated for youth violence outreach, some shit. And I'm like,
yeah,
what do you know about it? And John, or was it John?
John Tate took the position.
Yeah,
I just had dinner.
And I'm like, dude, you should be talking to us. Like, how did you get that role? There are people out here who've been doing the work for years. So
okay, so in John's defense, he is. I just had dinner with him, and Corey Prince and Charlemagne from Kenosha, Carl Fields. We just all had dinner together. They are reaching out, and Bob. Let's send out a shout out to Bobby. Bobby did almost 30 years in prison. He's home. He took a position with Expo. He is now working within our community to help curb this violence and curb the problems that we're having, right? Like, and here's how I feel about that, right? Like, I believe that our influences, right, the things that we put out there, the things that we've been saying, the things that we've been doing, the work that we've been putting in is the reason why we have more leaders stepping up like Bobby, Mike, you as well. I think that as long as we continue to do that, we'll continue to grow that leadership, man. And it's
I just feel like I ran a youth program in Racine County for 20 fucking years.
Yeah.
I know who has been doing this work for 30 years, 30 years. And I think that the people who have been doing that work should be in those positions because they have been boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Right. Nothing wrong. Nothing against John Tate. He was my alderman for a couple of years. It was. It is what it is. Whatever. I'm not trying to get on that. This is not about John Tate. Here, Mike. It's not about John Tate at all for me. It's the fact that a person, like here are people I know who have been doing this work since the 90s, right? In Racine. You got Maurice Horton. You got Neil Moore. You got Damian Dolly. There's 20 of us who've been doing this fucking work. Ron Helmick was doing this work for fucking ever, right? Like there are people who have been on the streets, on 10th Street, on the Hill, the darkest places on the South Side, dude. I've been in every one of those neighborhoods, like, and it's not about me. I don't even live there. And when I saw that, I'm like, we should talk. Because I know the people that have been doing that, and they should be in the forefront because they're the ones who have the reputation in these streets to have an impact and make a difference, right? Like, these are people who've been consistent. So anyway, aside from that, we are responsible for the things that we do. And unfortunately, sometimes as youth, we are doing things that we don't understand, right? And that's why I think youth outreach is important. We've let some underage kids come to our program, but we have to protect them because of our population. We've got people who are day one trying to get their shit together and would give great advice, but might be bad examples,
Yep.
Or might be good examples, but living, in questionable way. Who knows, right? We've had all kinds come. We know we've had people that we've lost to crime, suicide, murder, things. It's when you're doing this work at this level with what we're doing, we have to be careful who we let, but we do try to talk to the kids. We're trying to turn around the next generation of leaders as well, right? Like there are plenty of people who are in these walls who have the opportunity to do something for someone else, right?
And that ties right into our pillars, to be honest with you. It ties right into
That's why we're on this tangent right now, because we're setting that up, right? Now, having said all of that, I talked about Tuffy and the example of how he was mad and then not mad right after it happened. It like the actual beef became like non-existent. Now, here's something you want to know about things like murder, things like jumping someone or beating somebody up, right? Going after someone. And you remember some of our members, this was one of the most profound ways it was talked about when two opposite gang enemies were sitting across our table. This is when we had our meetings over there on in Uptown, right?
Yep.
And this guy, and the one guy said, I wanted a pound of your flesh and you wanted a pound of mine. Like that's how serious this beef was when they were trying to lay it to rest, right? The things that we're feeling about people, places, and things, about past, present, and future, even though it might last for a really long time, it actually becomes fleeting in hindsight, right? Like, look at how many years we went in prison, and how fleeting from this moment it feels when we look back, like that. 20 years, 15 years. You know, I've done almost 10 fucking years in the hole in segregation, and so, like, I've been put in the hole by myself, segregated from the other men in the hole, right? You know, like in the basement at Waupun with me and Jimmy, or his brother, I'm trying to remember his name now, the Medina
brothers.
You know, we're in the basement, you know, by ourselves, right? So the things that we have gone through right here, right now, you know, for those of us early in recovery, seem like we can't get past them. And a lot of the times it has to do because of the feelings that we have associated with those experiences. And we often feel like those feelings are like a moral line we cannot budge from.
Yeah.
So, for example, you know, and I've used this example in the past, but it's still such a big issue in my life, you know, that I've been working through for all my life. My mom's brother sexually assaulted me and my sister when I was 2, starting when I was 2, and my sister was 5. Now, think of the emotional, like, piece of that connection. Like, that's a very extreme example, but it is an example in my life. The extremeness of my attachment to that issue was so bad that it drove rage, and it drove me to like homicidal, zero state levels of anger and frustration and rage, right? For years to come. I only know this now, like in hindsight, right? Now, there was a time when you would have told me that these things that have been done to me were unforgivable. The shit that Wisconsin prisons did to me, the shit that Illinois, which was even worse than Wisconsin, did to me, and I was even younger, right? Torture. And I'm talking about torture that lasted months going into years. You know, it's inhumane to think about putting somebody in the hole for decades at a time and then just releasing him into society as if he's going to make it, right? Like he has any bearings to make it, right? It's like, it's incredible. And so you start to get these ideas around this. Now, this is all leading up to one of the first pillars we have to talk about, which is forgiveness. Because now you start weighing in with people who have been through things that they find unforgivable, right? And so how do you make a business case to someone who says the things that have been done to me, which is true, are unforgivable, which is also true? And even though it's true, it's not all the truth. It's a truth, but it's not the only truth. There are other truths that come with that, right? So the things that have been done to me are horrible, terrible, human crime, you know, crimes against humanity, crime. They're probably like crimes that should be investigated at the human rights level, right? When you have things like that, it makes it the The value that you hold is the idea that you have been a victim of great injustice, and you know you've been the victim of great injustice. And so why in the fuck do you have to be the one to resolve what's been done to you when the people you want to fix it are the people who did it to you? And then
Say that again. Say that again. Repeat that. Repeat
the
that.
people you want to fix it are the people who have done it to you.
Yeah.
And then and the second phase, the way this compounds, right? It's like compound interest. The way this compounds is now you also want the world to take ownership because they stood by silently while these things happened. Right? They turned a blind eye. They witnessed the atrocity. And when you make them aware of the atrocities, they don't have anything to say and they don't do anything about it. And so now you realize, well, the person who hurt me doesn't care. And the people in charge of the world don't care. And then the next culprit is God, if that's what you believe in, right? Because then you start to question, if God is good, why would he let these things happen? Why would he let them happen to me? And why would he let them happen to me so many times? And when I was so young, when I like it just compounds. And so by the time you come to FA, right, by the time you emerge from the dank fucking shit-filled hole, bottomless pit you've been in for fucking your whole life, by the time you get to this table, you're like, what the fuck would I be talking about forgiveness for?
Right.
And what do I owe the world, regardless of what I've done, based on everything that's been done to me? Right? There's a lot of us. Not everyone feels that way, but there's a lot of us. A lot of us who feel that way.
Yeah.
You know. And so when I say, hey, because step 2 and 3 start to tickle you here around these relationships you have to establish with the world around you, right? And if you've been at war with the world around you for all these years and these moments,
say that, Linda. I love you.
You know, when you've been in the world like that, it's hard to consider whether or not these things are for you, and how what. Yeah, a lot of times you're thinking, what does that have to do with recovery? And I'm going to say, based on what I know about the world, is that at the basis of our recovery are our emotions and our thoughts. And if we have issues that are unsolved, they're unhealed, and remain in that unhealed section, it will interfere with your recovery. It causes trust issues. You know, you want to isolate and distance yourself. You know, you won't see the value in certain things that are important to. It's, you know, it's like leaving shit on a plate that you have to eat from and expecting it not to contaminate whatever you put on that plate. Right? It's, if there's any remnants of shit on your plate, the plate of recovery, it's going to affect whatever you have to put on there. That's maybe for your own good. Yeah. Right? Think of taking penicillin from a plate that has shit on it. what fucking good is the penicillin going to do for you, right? Like, you see, like, you have to remove this stuff. We're going to come up with some ideas. We're going to think about some ideas that make this possible. And I really like, you know, forgiveness is for you, not them. That could be a part of it. That could be a part of it, right? Because remember, here at Formers, whatever motivates you, right? If it's for you and not them, or it's for them and not you, we believe your motivation is good enough, regardless of the direction, at least to start the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as we talked about before, most of the time, we're not talking about forgiveness to someone in day one. That's not a day one conversation, right? There's too much else going on. But eventually we get to a crossroads where forgiveness and redemption, forgiveness and reconciliation are impossible not to talk about anymore.
Yeah.
And as we start to unpackage, as you start to unpackage the issues that you're confronting, you'll start to see, hopefully, reason why it makes sense. So, like, a lot of times, you know, touching on Linda's example, a lot of times when you think that forgiveness has something to do with the other person, that can be a barrier. But what if we could separate it from the other person? What if it didn't have to have anything to do with the other person? What if it didn't require you to go have a heartfelt sit down conversation with the person who assaulted you when you were 2? What if it didn't have anything to do with that? Because in our minds, for some reason, we believe that's what it consists of.
Right.
And I think it has to do with the way we talk about it. You know, a lot of people do something called they bank all their energy on this idea that if I go through this process with this other person, it will make it better. And what I have learned is that leads to something that I call the great disappointment. It's the great disappointment, right? And let me put it out there. Let's say in your mind, you have fantasized about confronting, let's say, this made up uncle. We'll make this uncle up, right? You have fantasized for years about going to your made up uncle and saying, I forgive you for the shit you did to me. And then you fantasize that this person would say all the right things. Like you want him to say all these right things. You know, I'm sorry, it was my fault, I shouldn't have done it. Let's say that's the
goal, yeah.
the best thing that could happen. Now, let's say you go have this conversation with your made-up uncle. And he says, I'm sorry, it's my fault, I shouldn't have done those things. He gives you the best fucking answer in the world. You leave that meeting and you still feel fucking empty inside. And now it throws you for another fucking loop. Because you're like, wait a minute. I put all this investment thinking that this is what I needed. And at the end of the day, it had nothing to do with what I actually needed to heal.
Yeah.
But on the other side, you go to your uncle, your made-up uncle, and you say, blah, blah, blah. And he says, what? That never happened. Oh, what? You know, fuck you. I don't need your apology. Right? It's like you can get anything in between those reactions.
And then where do you go when you don't get the reaction you want? How do you proceed forward from there? Like,
well, yeah, it's another wound.
Yeah.
Right?
The worst one in the world is, what are you talking about? I don't remember that at all.
That never happened. Yeah.
Right. Like, it was so insignificant to them, right? Maybe they're not denying it. Maybe they truly don't remember. You don't know, right? And if they don't remember, how do you work forward in your life feeling that this person who wounded you so deeply didn't even remember doing it? Like, you're holding this hurt and this pain and this hatred, and they don't even remember that it was that insignificant to them. Now, how do you push forward?
So we can see all these caveats, right? It's like an endless room of chambers. It's a labyrinth, right? You walk into this maze and there's no way out, right? There's no way out.
Yep.
And everywhere you turn, again, remember, even when you get the gold AAA standard apology, right? I love you. I'm sorry. Hugs, kisses. You know, I'll turn myself in. Even I'll cut my own head up. Like, even murder, right? Like, we murder the person and we're still left fucking empty. And if nothing more, what I learned from listening to Tuffy, you're permanently attached to the thing you were trying to separate yourself from by the thing that you did. Now you deepen the attachment to the thing you were trying to escape. And that's where we suffer so much, because we've suffered through this attachment more than we have the event. Right? The holding on to the event is more harmful over the years, because we recreate and we relive and we re-experience by holding on in this way. right? And so we become devoted to our suffering, man. Right? We become devoted to our suffering. Now, I was just giving a guy who ends up needing some recovery help, right? And just talking to him yesterday, I took him someplace and we talked for like 2 hours, right? And you know, and he kept saying, I feel like I'm cursed. You know, I've been hurt a lot. Everyone I try to help hurts me. Like he just had all these things, right? And not once did he ever ask himself, could it be me? Could I be at the root? Could I be part of the source of the problems I keep having? Right? And he didn't want to hear anything about being the common thread. You know, and then he was talking about moving to Colorado because that'll make it better, right? And you know, eventually I said, you know, wherever you go, there you are, you know, and if you're taking that plate with shit on you from here to Colorado and you're eating off that plate, you know, you still get. I try choose forgiveness in each. Oh, it's pretty cool. It's a lot there to unpack. Now, me and you have talked about forgiveness on this show 1,000 times, and we'll talk about it 1,000 more. And I tell you, every time we talk about it, we come up with other reasons why this is in your favor, right? And then we hear from our folks in the chat, like, why it's in our favor to choose these things, or sometimes why it's hard to choose it. Trust me, I'm not saying choosing forgiveness or reconciliation is easy at all. You're talking about rooting out cancer with like a toothpick, you know, like it's going to be painful. However, there's pointless pain, and then there's pain that has a good reason behind it. You know, we call that pointless suffering. You know, do you suffer poor or do you suffer well? But you will suffer, right? It's really, you need surgery, right? But you don't get it and you get it. You're going to suffer regardless of the path you take.
Yep.
Both paths involve suffering. However, the one where you refuse surgery, that suffering is very different from the suffering you take when you go after what you need. You have a toothache, you got to go to the dentist. What do? They take needles this big and they stick it in your 9 times, you know, all over your mouth, and you know, pain, suffering, tears, you know, squeezing the armrest, groaning. Like you don't do it because you want to avoid that, but then your tooth fucking kills you one day, or you go through that, live with the pain for a few weeks, and then come out of the other side better. Maybe not perfect. Maybe there's still some pain, but it's better. We know what's going to happen if you don't get the surgery. I can predict with great certainty. We're not quite sure what will happen if you get it, but there's a chance, a great chance maybe, that it's going to be better.
Yeah.
So you have to choose your pain. I mean, and so when we talk about recovery and we talk about forgiveness, it's in the same spirit, right? We're saying you're still going to suffer, man. Look, Monte, when me and you talk about our things, we're hurting in those moments.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is walking to the source of freedom and not away from it as we go through it.
We have a lot of conversations that I could do without having if I wanted to hide. You know what I mean? Like some of the conversations we have are deeply painful. But I know that when we're done with them, like there hasn't been a conversation that we've had that I've walked away worse off because of, right? Even the hard ones, even the ones where like you and I are talking and you're really getting into the core of my problems, right? And you're like, bro, and I'm like, I don't want to fucking talk about that. And you're like, are you a pussy? And I'm like, no. And then we talk about it, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah, yes, I am.
No, I'm not. But you know, the likening it to pulling the teeth is a great example because, as you guys know, I have no teeth anymore. I'm waiting for my new plates and everything to be made. Um, when they pulled my tooth, the one that was the worst of them all, I had micro fractures in my roots, undetectable by visible. Right, my teeth looked fine. Um, I was so sick and I had been in pain for so long that when he pulled the tooth, he said there was a almost golf ball size infection underneath the roof of my mouth, pushing upward. So you didn't see it outward. I didn't have a swelling. I had been in pain so long that when they pulled my teeth and I came home, I cried with relief because I had not realized how much pain I had lived my life in for something that I didn't need. Like he could pull it and I was better. Right now, you know, I'll get dentures or implants, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm no longer in the pain. I didn't know how much pain I was in until I got rid of it. Right. And that's sometimes how I feel about the baggage that I carry from the hurt and the anger of my past. And honestly, the person to hurt me the most was me, right? Like I've inflicted so much emotional and psychological damage on my own, you know, persona, on me, that I had to come to terms to forgive that because I didn't understand how much I had hated myself deep down inside, this overwhelming, burning hatred of myself, right? Like I was worthless. I was stupid. I was purposeless, right? That was a hard one for me to understand that for years I thought I had no real purpose in this world. I was not important to anyone or myself, and anybody who thought I was important was a fool, right? When I came to terms with the damage I did to myself and I sat down and truly had to forgive myself, right? It didn't happen. Like the next day, I was like, hey, I'm a fucking great guy. Like, yay, I'm better. It's still an ongoing process. I got to remind myself, hey, man, like you're struggling to be better and you're doing a good job. You're struggling to be better and you're helping people. You're struggling to be better and you have a purpose, right? Forgiveness, like and I keep flashing up here on the banners, guys, so that you can see um, forgiveness, reconciliation, and redemptions are our pillars, right? And if you look at them, the very first one is forgiveness. We can't move to a reconciliation with our community, our families, our victims, ourselves, right? Until we hit that forgiveness, right? Until we learn what that deeply means to the core. And you know, FA has been my teacher in that, right? Like we've been over the steps how many times? I mean, 100, 150 over the last decade plus. And every time we go over the steps, every time we work through these, like I'm learning more. Like I didn't just read step one, do step one. I was like, all right, I'm done. Right? Like every time I go back, it's like, fuck, there's more layers to this onion, right? You remember how militant I was in the beginning? Fuck you, accept step one or die, right? like like I would put it in mortal. It was mortal peril for me, right? You either accepted step one fully at that moment, right? Like there was no, hey, you can take this a little by a little, right? Like we know this is hard. It was like, no, accept step one or you're gonna die. I'm already planning your funeral, bro. You're dead in my head. Like, love you. Be better. Right here, a decade later, I understand. Like, man, step one's hard. Take a little bit of it as you go, right? Like, come back to it. Do it again. Do it again. Understand that you're gonna fuck up. Understand that, like, we're a flawed creation, right? Like, we're a flawed being. Um, but yeah, man. Yeah, every time we talk about forgiveness, bro, I remember or see something that I need to work on and push forward with. Um, I, my dad's been gone since 2011. Right? He asked me for my forgiveness the day before he died, um, the day before he took his life. Right? And I gave it to him, and I'm still giving it to him every day. Right? Like I'm still having to repeat that. It's a hard job, and if I don't suffer through it well, I'll fail myself and my family and my friends, right? And sometimes I'm going to. I'm gonna fail them, right? I'm not gonna be able to do it, and I'm gonna reach out to someone to help me. I'm gonna call you, bro. I'm gonna call Lizzie. I'm gonna call her dad, Steve, my father-in-law. Like he gets it. We don't even have to talk about it. Like he gets it, you know. And I think for formers, that's uh, there's a very good reason why it's the pillar. It's a very good reason why it's the first pillar.
I feel like there is, my personal and professional experiences have taught me that there is no forward progress without exploring these ideas around how to move forward in life if I don't overcome the things that led to my exile, right? When you think about, one thing you got to think about this, man. Me and you have both been kicked out of the world before.
And
We
kicked
were
out of the kicked out world.
we were we were exiled, like,
And then exiled in exile.
and then we said, well, I'm going to double down and exile myself.
Right.
Now I'm going into exile from my exile, right? And there are people who have never been to prison, but who have been living in exile for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
And I really like the way Mike and Heather and is it Uriel is talking about
Uriel.
things, right? It's the self-imposed exile is the only one we can really address, right? And a lot of times we go into exile because we think that's what it will take to outrun our issues.
No doubt.
I'm going to outrun my issue by hiding in the world around me, like going into exile, right? And in the literature, it clearly says your issues can run faster than you can, like, and they can run through things. They can run through things like the walls and space, time, and they're ethereal. They're not bound by brick and mortar. They're and many times they can anticipate where you're going, and then they're waiting for you to get there. They're already there. They're ahead of you, right? And so this self-imposed exile will come to an end when we recognize, and I think Kevin is saying this really well, right? It starts at your core, no matter what who's around you, whatever you have to do, right? It's once you accept that it's you, that you have to do something about this, regardless of the injustice, regardless of the scars, regardless of how far back to climb out of your exile is, you're the one who has to do it. We then start to get away from denial once we come to terms with that, right? Because and it's crazy because the denial really did protect us for a long time from our own wrongdoings, our own shame and guilt. But when you return from exile and you see the damage that's out there and you choose to face it because you're no longer looking through a lens of denial, you're overwhelmed with shame and guilt, which is why we spend a lot of time talking about the difference between shame and guilt and remorse. Shame and guilt will drive you deeper into active depression and feed the addiction that led to your exile. Don't confuse shame and guilt with feelings of remorse. A lot of us don't ever get to the point in our recovery. We don't stay around long enough to get to remorse because the shame and guilt drives us out. Remorse is similar to shame and guilt, except that instead of driving you deeper inside of yourself through depression, you start to realize that you need to start putting energy out into the world to start making it better. If you're on an island and you need to grow a garden, you need to water the garden, right? You're not going to survive on rocks. So you've got to start to nurture your environment as well, so that you can live, heal, breathe, eat, sustain, have shelter. sustenance, right? And so when you come out of that denial, you realize like shit. And then, you know, for me, it was like there are still people in the rubble. Like I don't have time to go off and sulk, kick myself in the ass. I should get back in there, start, you know, help pulling people out of the rubble. I can take time to heal as well, but I recognize that I have caused harm. And so that might be, you know, just being practical, might be like paying child support. It might mean like going to knock on the door and try to visit your kids, or, you know, it might mean getting a job. It might mean, you know, taking a shower. Fuck, you know, like there's all kind of lows we all got to come from, you know. We have to start nurturing. And I think the best thing you can do is before you start making promises is start getting to a place where you work on yourself enough where you can start keeping your promises. But you got to, that means you got to do the work. You know, it's easy to say, I'm sorry. And I used to tell the guys when I worked in the jail, I used to say that they would want to write these apology letters. And it was a little, I realized in hindsight, it was a little, maybe not the best approach, but there's still merit here. Why don't you apologize when you have roughly about the same amount of time working on yourself, being consistent, keeping your promises and doing well? That way people know that this is not just another empty promise. Yeah. Like you, and so maybe, you know, for those of us who've been fucking up for 20 years, that might be a long time to keep people waiting for your apology. But essentially the lesson is become consistent in your own life and stable in your own life. Strengthen your legs so you can stand up on your own 2 feet. You know that you have a system going and it's working. You feel efficient, sufficient, proficient, right, at the things that you're doing before you start making promises, right? And before you start apologizing. You can tell people, I am sorry, but understand that means that probably carries no weight with the people that are tired of you. And so now, once you verbalize your apology, your actions have to line up every fucking day for months, weeks, months, years before people start to let their guard down around you. Family, friends, community, bosses. But that won't be everywhere in your life, because what have we learned, Monte? While you might be struggling to make your way back into some places in life, other places in life will be more forgiving quicker.
Yep.
Like when you get your first job, like when a renter looks past your history and says, okay, you can live here. Like, you know, like when your probation says, okay, why don't you start coming in every 2 weeks now? Right. Like, you know, there's all these ways where you start to see redemption, where you start to see, okay, the world is opening up to me little by little and giving me chances to reestablish myself.
Yep.
You know?
I agree.
Yeah, Heather, I hear you. You know, there's so much wisdom in the comments, man. You know, and that's something Formers recognizes, that the wisdom is in the room.
Yeah.
Right? The wisdom is in the room. But these conversations that me and you have, Monte, inspire that wisdom to come out and be shared and shown, right? I wish we could analog like all of these comments, because they belong somewhere in our literature. You know, like the tidbits from folks that they share on these comments, they should be a part of. They should be a part of the chapters that we write. You know, that because these are the things that folks listening or coming to FA are going to find value in, not just what we're saying, but what our members are saying as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. We have records of everything.
Just log them. Just start logging them. You know, like when we might not use them all, but there are, and we never know when we need to go into the bank and say, oh yeah, so-and-so said this about that.
I got a challenge real quick for all you in chat. I got 4 shares and 12 members in the group. So if you could just reach down over there, click that share button, hit public, share it out for us, it would be greatly appreciated. We are starting to reach more and more people. We're getting more and more new viewers, which is great. But like every week I say it, man, without you guys and without you guys hitting that share button and making those comments like you do, we're not gonna grow as quickly and as strong as we can. Yeah.
I mean, if you think that there's any value in what we're sharing, we can't hoard it. We're not asking me and Monte don't make a dime on this shit, right? It's not about.
I don't
It's
want
not
to think
about
about how much money you put in, let alone how much money I
we
put in.
spend, right? Like, but in time, right? There's a lot of
Right.
time.
Right.
Oh, FYI, Raquel messaged us and said they want us to put a proposal in.
Okay.
So,
I'm
you know, we're
excited
just
by
trying to
that.
spread the message, man. You know,
Hey,
and
yeah. That
when
is a
you
huge
share
thing.
it, your comments are shared too, so it helps
Right.
people see what you have to say.
Why don't you tell them about Raquel and what's going on with that, and show them how we grow?
Yeah, Raquel is out of Illinois working within the treatment court and has a very successful group with potential people who look like formers, who could be formers, right? Who have me and Monte have done like I think we zoomed in on one of their group meetings and we talked about formers, and from there a lot of interest sparked. So Raquel went to the powers that be in Illinois Corrections, and we've just been invited to submit a proposal to allow formers as a part of their treatment model. And so I've been working on that this past week. And so, you know, it's just, we've had, and, you know, we have a lot of these good things. I get messages weekly from folks all over the country, all over the world, who are using formers and who are using my TED Talk. Some people have built entire websites around our stuff. Like it's incredible, right? So we are having an impact. There is an impact. But we can't have a reach if the reach is only our circle. We need you guys to take these messages, man. And you can see they're just genuine conversations. There's no self-promoting. There's no self-aggrandizing. Like, we are here to send a message that reaches out, right? It reaches out into the world. This message has made it to Europe, to London, to Poland, to Brazil. You know,
I just talked to Stashik too.
you know, it's all over the world, and there are people who have been using this model all over the world, and we wanted to go to places where people normally don't get these messages. Of course, we're targeting prisons. Of course, we're targeting treatment centers. But what about those folks who live in rural America who could benefit from something like this? What about those folks who don't have access to meetings, right? Like, people need to hear what we have to say. So please, we're grateful that you get something out of this, but without you helping us spread the message, we're dead in the water. Right? We can't expand, and we need to. There's not a money-making scheme. There's nothing to be had here. We're just taking our time, doing our 12 steps every time we step in here, you know, and spreading the message.
Don't let Sammy get ahead of you. If you guys want to cash at me some money, I'm not going to complain. I'll take anything I can get. If you each send me $1 and share this, and have your friend send me $1, by the end of the day, I'll have, you know, $20.
Wow.
No, and you know, that was something that Lizzie and I had talked about a long time ago. Was do what we put in financially. Like, I'll tell you guys, just in printer and paper, I've spent thousands of dollars over the last decade, right? Like, I can't imagine how many thousands upon thousands of dollars you've spent in printer ink. Because I know anytime I can't get a physical copy because I'm out of ink, you're printing up 10 or 15 of them.
Dude, like, it cost me $12 to mail an FA packet to an inmate.
Yeah.
I was like, how the fuck is that? It's a piece of paper. What are you doing? Like,
you know, Lizzie's response was, what are we going to do with it when we're dead? Like, who cares? Like, if you're doing what makes you happy, and this truly makes you happy, we're all in. We're all in, right? Like,
anytime you're founding something, is nothing. The upfront cost is sweat equity, like a motherfucker, right? So, I mean, no one's looking at the cost. And I firmly believe enough people know about FA, where FA is just not going to die. It's here to stay.
Yeah. Well, dude, there's still independent groups running in all over the country. Like, and
you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I love you, bro. Like, people don't get
Thank you too. You've been riding right here with me, man.
We're step 12, man. Like, that's our, and so you guys know that's what this is. This is step 12, spreading the message, right? bringing the message to everybody and anybody who will hear about it. In Nebraska, I was at the gas station. There was a lady whose son passed away, very similar to my son's passing. And, we sat down for a little while. She watched the show, one of the repeat lives, and she was so excited. She wanted to talk to their city council about doing something similar for their community, right? Like everywhere I go, I'm preaching about this, right? This is my walk. This is my religion, right? Like spreading recovery and helping clean up the mess that I help cause, right? That's my spirituality. That's my walk, man. That's a big part of it, right? It isn't the whole thing, but I love you guys for all the support you guys give me, man. Like I get the messages, the people will send me a message and be like, "Man, bro, watch the show. Thank you." Like that shit means something deep to me, you guys, and I love you for it. So thank all of you, Kevin. Absolutely, bro. He's sitting in my living room right now. He drove like 5 hours to be here for Danica's birthday party and birthday. He spent the weekend with us. I've known him since he was 16 years old, and we were at Green Bay Max together in 1995. And I watched him grow, mature, and become this amazing human being, man. I'm so honored to call you my brother, man, and to have you here. I love you guys. We appreciate it. We're going to be here next Saturday. Take the time to read this. I want to say thank you guys as well. We hit the double digits on the shares. Always a great thing, man. It definitely helps us out. Love you guys. Thank you. We'll see you next Sunday.
We'll pick up on these next Sunday.
Yeah, we'll finish off forgiveness and then move towards reconciliation.
That was the setup. This whole conversation was just the setup for the pillars.
Ain't that crazy how much we could sit down about each particular part?
Dude, think about writing this shit and having to condense it down because it could just go forever. Right?
Think about having to edit this shit when you send me like 800 pages and like, how does this sound, bro? Let me know in an hour. Like, hey, we're gonna meet up later this afternoon. Read these 900 pages that I wrote, and tell me what you think. And if we could change the voice a little, do you think we need? And it's like 800 pages, man. Like, no, like I'll see you in a year.
I'm sorry you didn't finish school, bro. It's not my fault.
I've been getting the education I need now, man. So we love you guys.
I got my education in the joint. So peace out, y'all.
Peace. I love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.